Hey guys, RugbyH here. So I thought, why not give you guys my World Rugby Dream Team for 2024? With it being announced, this Sunday, I thought, why not create my own version, what I believe should be, kind of the dream team for this year in terms of what we've seen throughout the Six Nations, the July Internationals, the Rugby Championship, and the Autumn Internationals. So I've comprised a starting 15 here, which I believe is the best in what we've seen throughout this year in terms of form. And it's based purely on form, not who's the best player in every position. It's based on form. And that's what World Rugby does as well. And yeah, I had to make some tough choices here, particularly in one position, because again, I think there was one position where I was pondering over, I think for honestly like 30 minutes deciding who to go with here, because there's a lot of players who I believe stood out in that position, but I don't think anyone was like amazing. But anyway, we'll get into that when it comes to it. But before we get into this, guys, make sure to click the like button, guys. Subscribe to our channel, and yeah, leave your kind of dream teams in the comment section below. I want to see who you guys think deserves to be in this dream team. But here we go. For the front row, then, this is the front row that I've selected for this dream team. I've gone with the likes of Oxton Che, number 1. Following him, I've then gone with Malcolm Marks, and to finish off, I've gone with Tyrell Lomax. I think these three have definitely been the best, I think, in terms of the front row. I mean, starting off with Oxton Che, I mean, he's kind of like an obvious choice, really. I don't think there's anyone been better than him in that position. He's just been incredible, really, for the Springboks. I mean, throughout really the whole year, going from the July Internationals down to kind of the Rugby Championship and the Autumn Nations, he's really stood out for the Springboks. And I think the two tests he really stood out was against the Irish, I'd say, in South Africa. He was really dominant in those, and probably the best player, actually, when you look back at it, in terms of he was kind of like the best players kind of look back at that series against the Irish. So he definitely stood out in that one. And of course, in Rugby Championship, he held his own as you kind of expected. Yeah, in the Autumn Nations, of course, he did appear, and yeah, he's done very well in the Autumn Nations as well, for what we've seen so far. So yeah, look, he was even up there for kind of, well, a lot of people were saying he should have been a nominee, actually, for World Player of the Year. So it's kind of surprising he wasn't in it, because it would have been cool to see a prop at least be nominated, because I don't think it's happened before. But man, he's definitely the number 1 without a doubt. For number 2, Malcolm Marks. Now, this is a tricky position, because I think there's a lot of hookers who've stood out for that this year. I mean, I think Muvaka for the French was really impressive early on within the Six Nations, and particularly Dan Sheehan. He's probably the number 1, I'd say, in the Six Nations. Hands down was the best hooker throughout that competition. Again, Dan Sheehan's one of those where I would have actually picked him if he just didn't have injuries, really. It just came down towards injuries. He wasn't available really with the rest of the year, and that's kind of the reason why I didn't go ahead with him. Again, Muvaka was very impressive. I thought he was another player who I think stood out a lot throughout this kind of calendar year, going towards the Six Nations, down to the Autumn Nations. I think he was pretty consistent, I think, throughout all the games he actually played in. Just the closest player that kind of challenged Malcolm Marks in this position was probably Cody Taylor. I think Cody Taylor, I mean, again, he was injured early on in the year, again, towards club rugby, but he, of course, came right in time for international rugby, playing, again, he was part of that kind of rugby championship, and man, he was arguably the All Blacks' best player, I'd say, throughout the rugby championship. I mean, there's obviously a lot of players that stood out, but he was definitely one of them, and man, he was a heck of a player. But I think Malcolm Marks, the reason why I selected him was that he impacted the game. Like he kind of changed the game in terms of moments. Like, he got 2 tries against the Wallabies. He got the defining try against the All Blacks in that rugby championship. I think it was the second test, actually. And yeah, again, he got another try as well. One against the Welsh. I think he got one against the Pumas as well, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, man, he's just a great player to watch, guys. I mean, at the end of the day, it's one of those where I can understand if people don't want to go with him because he does come off the bench, so it does limit the amount of minutes he gets. But at the same time, he's just an awesome player to watch. So I think Malcolm Marks is my number 2. And yeah, Tyrell Lomax, man, he's just a player who really is just very consistent. I think throughout the year has really stood his ground. And again, I think normally you would go with someone like Pat Furlong here if he was available. But again, similar towards Dan Sheehan, just injuries haven't helped him. I'm trying to think of other players. I mean, Francois Herbo is another player who stood up for the Boks, but again, he hasn't been available for the Autumn Nations. So that's kind of the reason why I went with Tyrell Lomax. He's just a very consistent player. He's had a really good year, actually, overall for the All Blacks. Hasn't done anything wrong. Really consistent. He's pretty good from a scrum situation as well. So yeah, I think he definitely deserves to get in towards this front row. For the locks, then, this is where I've gone with Eben Smith at number 4 and Tag Byrne at number 5. I think Eben Smith is a clear standout in terms of number 4 position. You have to go with Eben Smith. I mean, he's one of the players, of course, nominated for World Player of the Year. So it's no obvious in terms of selecting him. And man, he is just Yeah, it is incredible watching him. We're kind of blessed to kind of just see how how he plays really, because he has played for the Bucks for a very, very long time. And yeah, just man, it just shows that he's just able to kind of continue he's kind of you can make the argument he's kind of in his prime really right now, like in a way. Like he's just been great to watch. And yeah, again, he did of course pass Victor Matfield as becoming the all-time Springbok in terms of caps. So another achievement to add towards his books. And yeah, just man, heck of a player. And yeah, Tag Burn, man, he's another one who I think is very underrated. I think in terms of what he does for the Irish, I've always been very impressed by Tag Burn. I mean, again, early on he was playing as a six, but again he shifted towards a lock spot. And yeah, man, he is just incredible in what he does for the Irish. I mean, again, that combination that they do normally have McCarthy and then Ryan, and they put Tagburn as a six, but he's obviously been playing. He can play lock as well, and man, he's just a great player, man. He's just so good, and yeah, like there's a lot of players you can go to this position. I'm trying to think who else has stood out. You had, I mean, Scott Baird and Tupovai. I thought have been excellent during different periods of the year. I think Tupovai was excellent throughout the Rugby Championship. Scott Baird, I'd say, was good throughout the England internationals as well as the Autumn Nations. I mean, for the Box, you have Ruan Norte. I think definitely stood up for the Box, I think, throughout the Rugby Championship. For the English, I mean, you might think this is an odd one to say, but I think Mara Tojas actually he's looked pretty decent, I think, throughout the year as well. I don't think he had a bad year, so I think he's definitely in the conversation. I'm trying to think who else is there. There's, I mean, for the Argentinians, there's the Argentinian, not Oviedo, but there's, there's an Argentinian lock. I'm gonna have to remember, guys. Let me know in the comment section. I think he really stood out throughout the Rugby Championship. Can't remember his name on the top of my head right now. But man, look, there's a lot of locks I could have gone with, guys. But I just think these two are definitely the most reliable and just solid in terms of what they've done throughout this year. So for the loose forwards, then this is where I've gone with Wallace at TT number 6. Peter Steph-Latour number 7, and then Caden Doris at the number 8. So again, this is kind of like one of those arguments where I can understand if people want to see Peter Steph at the 6 and you choose another 7. If I had to in that situation, I would probably go with Josh Van der Flair, or you could probably, if you wanted to, you could shift Artur Sevilla to 7. But again, he's been playing at 8 most of the time. I mean, it's tough, guys, because there's a lot of players who've stood out throughout this year. But I think I've done it in the way in which World Rugby's done in the past, because I've seen that they selected Sia Khaleesi at 6 beforehand in this kind of dream team scenario. So if that's kind of the way they're thinking, then I'm going to pick Peter Steph in terms of that 7 spots and Satiti the number 6. And I think both of them have stood out completely. I mean, first with Wallace Satiti, I mean, he's, I think, the clear standout for Breakthrough Player of the Year. He's just been awesome for what he's done for the All Blacks. And yeah, man, he's just so good. He's so good. And yeah, it's one of those where a lot of people, I mean, including me, by the way, I was definitely against the idea of picking him this early, Wallace Atiti. I thought it was really bold to set him early on. I mean, really in that English series, I thought that was the one I was like, whoa, like you're putting him. But again, he didn't really get many minutes, actually, now you look back at it, because it was really more someone playing Finau. He played more in that one. But again, he really stood out within the Rugby Championship. That's kind of where he came to his own, particularly against the Box. He had a really good performance against them. Played, I think 80 minutes in both tests against the Wallabies, and then he's looked pretty good throughout the automations, particularly against England. So yeah, he definitely deserves to get in. And then yeah, with Peter Steph-Latour, I mean, another player, of course, has been nominated for World Player of the Year, and yeah, just he is just awesome. He is just I don't know how to say this, but like he is just so good, and he does everything right. There's nothing that he does wrong, I think, in his game. Like he is just like if any forward in the world, loose forward in the world, wants to watch someone, I honestly would just say watch Peter Steph-Latour, because he does everything right in terms of like tackling, I guess what, charging players down, scoring tries, like just impact. I mean, he's versatile as well. He can play at lock. He's played there a few times for the Box throughout the Rugby Championship. So it just shows you like he can do everything in this game, man. He's just so good. So he definitely deserves to get into the side without a doubt. And then yeah, number 8, Caden Doris. I mean, he was sensational for the Irish throughout that kind of Six Nations. Really one of the best players, I'd say, for the Irish in that kind of campaign for theirs. And yeah, just kind of continue that form, I'd say, in the 2 tests against the Springboks down in South Africa. Really held his own, and probably the best player, actually, when you look back at those tests. I think he really stood out in that kind of in that July International. So yeah, he was really good then. And again, he's looked pretty good throughout the Autumn Nations as well. So he's a pretty good player. And again, another player who's been nominated for World Player of the Year. So yeah, just had to put him in. I feel bad for Artur Sevilla, because he's definitely a player who I don't think he's been. He's definitely not as good, obviously, as the previous year he had, because again, he was the World Player of the Year last year. I'm trying to think of other number 8s. There's Rob Valentini. I think for the Wallabies has really done well. But again, Wallabies were a bit shaky, I think, throughout the Rugby Championship, but he's done very well throughout the Autumn Nations. Then I'm trying to think of other players. Number 8, there's, Gregory Altra. He's always been very solid for the French. There's a lot of players you can go through, guys. Even like Oviedo, I think for the Argentinians has done very well, I think, throughout the year. Yeah, look, there's so many players I can pick from, but I think Kid Doors is definitely the number 8 for this one. Then, for the back line then, for the 9-10 combination. Now, this is probably where the shock will come in. Not with the first selection here, because I think Jamison Gibson Park is definitely the number 9 you have to go with, because he was, I think, the best player in that Six Nations campaign. I think out of any player, he was the player of the tournament. I know that they gave it towards Melancello for the Italians, and he definitely deserved, I guess, for what he did for the Italians in that campaign. But I'm just saying, in terms of the winners, in terms of the Irish who won the Six Nations, who was the best player from them? Gibson Park was hands down, I thought, the best player. He just dictated the game so well. And again, he kind of continued that form to what we saw kind of against the Box. And again, he's done very well throughout he's not done very well, but he looked pretty good, I'd say, throughout the throughout the automations, particularly against the All Blacks, man. He really disrupted them. Really, he just shows you the class he has. So yeah, he definitely is my number 9 without a doubt. Really good. Number 10. Now, this is the position, guys, which I was kind of the same before, where I honestly sat here for 30 minutes thinking, who deserves to be the number 10 in this dream team? Because honestly, I don't think there's been a player that's just been like stand out, really, in terms of like the clear hands down number 10. I think there's a number of players you could have selected here. For the All Blacks, just starting off, there's McKenzie and Bowden Barrett, who's kind of switched in and out at number 10. Both of them have had moments throughout the year who've looked unbelievable. For the Box, again, similar situation. You've had Manny Libbok and then Andre Pollard. Again, have had moments, have definitely helped the side in kind of the Rugby Championship and all that. So I could have selected any one of those 4. Honestly, they were just on their day. They've been very good for their respective sides. For the Irish, people may not like it now, but back in the Six Nations, Jack Crowley was actually pretty good for the Irish. I think he was really good for them and really stood out for them because, again, you have to remember, like, people thought the Irish would be a different kind of team without Johnny Sexton. I think he really stood up to that number 10 spot really nicely. So I think Jack Crowley was definitely my conversation. I'm trying to think who else. I know England haven't had a good campaign throughout the Autumn Nations, but before that, even throughout the Autumn Nations, he's probably the best player is Marcus Smith. He's definitely one that I thought putting this side. I just can't go with him because of the team performances. That's the problem. Like, if England at least won like 1 or 2 of those games in the Autumn Nations, particularly the Australia and New Zealand ones, they could have won those games. Then Marcus Smith, I think, would have to be the 10 in this team. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets it, actually. But it's just more of that. There's just so many 10s you can go with. There's like Finn Russell as well. He's looked good for the Scottish, really good. I'm trying to think who else. Jalabert for the French. But honestly, guys, let me just get to the player that I've selected here. Thomas Amanoz. I just think he's been a very underrated player, I think, throughout this year. I think a lot of people kind of just pass over him and kind of forget what he's done for the Pumas throughout this year. And again, you have to remember the Pumas have beaten the All Blacks in New Zealand and they've beaten the Springboks in Argentina. They did very well in those 2 games. Yes, I know the Springboks didn't play their first team in that, but still, it's impressive that they actually won that game. And again, he was a big part in that game. He pretty big in that kind of you can say that smashing really of the Wallabies in Argentina. And again, he's kind of continued that form in this Autumn Nation, scored a try against the Italians as well. You got 2 against the Springboks as well in both tests. So he's had a really good campaign, really solid for them. And again, you would normally think it's Santiago Caceres actually who's been the 10 for them, but actually he's actually been the better 10 for the Pumas this year. And yeah, I just think he's been really impressive. So again, look, there's a lot of 10s you can select here. So guys, trust me, you can change the number 10. I wouldn't be mad about it at all. Not mad about it at all. I just wanted to highlight a player which I believe stood out throughout this year in terms of form. And I think he actually honestly has had a really good campaign for the Argentinians. So it's just another reason why I wanted to kind of include him in terms of this dream team. And I think the Pumas have actually had a very underrated kind of campaign throughout the year. Again, he's actually playing tomorrow when I film this against the French. So we'll see how he gets on. But again, I just think he's been excellent. And yeah, he's just an excellent player to watch. So he's number 10. For the centers, this is like the easiest selection in the world. It's Damon Delunde and Jesse Krill, without a doubt. Those 2 are the centers, and it's not even close. I think those 2 are just hands down the center combination. Damon Delunde has been the most. I mean, he's just been so good throughout this year. I mean, he proved it against the English. He was just superb in that one. Jesse Krill, arguably the best player for the Bucks, I think, throughout the Rugby Championship. He was just so good throughout every game he played. And yeah, just man, it is the best combination that there is. And yeah, look, I mean, we're also not at the stage yet where we can kind of you can have this debate. I mean, I've had this debate several times with my dad. Like, what do you think is the best combination ever in terms of centers in World Rugby? And honestly, I would put Damien Delende and Jesse Krill up there. Like, you could honestly make an argument for that now, because it's one of those where those two have just been so good together in terms of kind of the chemistry, just how the different kind of profile the two are in a way. And just, yeah, they've been really good throughout this year, guys. So without a doubt, those two are my centers. And then, yeah, with the back three then here, guys, I've then gone with Mark Slay, number 11. I've then gone with Cheslin Kobe, number 14. And then, of course, Thomas Ramos on the number 15 spot. So, again, I think Cheslin Kobe just picks himself. He is obviously one of the last player out of the World Rugby nominees for Men's Player of the Year. So he definitely gets in. The best winger, I think, throughout this year, hands down. Really impactful for the Springboks throughout, kind of the Rugby Championship, particularly in kind of the Autumn Nations here, getting 2 tries against the English as well. So, yeah, man, he's just an awesome player to watch, and just, yeah, he's just so good. He was even good for kind of the test against the Irish as well in the Giants Nationals. So can't disregard that. So, man, he's just a heck of a player. He has the best sidestep in the game without a doubt. But I will say the other winger I've started, Mark Slayer, man, this was a tough one, because I think there's a lot of players that stood out here. And again, I put Mark Slayer, who I prefer him at 14, but again, he's been playing at 11 a few times for the All Blacks, so that's why I put him there. And again, you could have chosen his counterpart with Caleb Clark. I think he's had an excellent year for the All Blacks. He was probably the best player. He was definitely the better winger out of the two throughout the Rugby Championship. But Mark Slayer, man, he's got 4 tries actually against the English. When you think about it, he got 2 tries in the Giants Nationals, 2 tries in Twickenham. And yeah, he's just so good. He's like the most untouchable player there is. And I mean that in like the kind way possible, like where you just can't tackle him. He's just so good at getting off tackles that it's just hard stopping him, guys. And I kind of the contact meters that he's able to gain, like when he picks up the ball and just runs with it and kind of just does 360 turns and does whatever he does, it's just so good. And again, as a Blues fan, I just appreciate watching him kind of in Super Rugby. But man, he's just so good. And again, if there's other players I can think of who stood up this year, I think James Lowe for the Irish has looked. I think he was excellent throughout the Six Nations. Again, he was good throughout the Springbok series as well. Really good in that one. I remember that. I think he got like 50-22 in that one, where I was like, whoa, he looked pretty good. And again, he kind of got a try. I think he got a try or set up a try really nicely that I can recall was like world class. So he was definitely in my thinking. I'm trying to think who else. Louis Belleray for the French. He's actually looked really good recently for the French. And again, I don't think he was outstanding, I'd say, for the Six Nations, but still he's been very impressive form throughout the years. So you have to mention him. I mean, is there anyone else that's really stood out? I mean, I don't really think so in that position. I think that's kind of all the covers I can think of. Oh, of course, Duan van der Merwe. I've got to mention him. He was excellent throughout the Six Nations. So he's definitely the other player. It was great, of course, getting that hat trick against the English. That was like, it's kind of mad to see. But he does love scoring against the English somewhere. It's just some reason he just loves doing it. But yeah, he's definitely was another player I thought of. But yeah, with the other players, I mean, really with the 15 really left. I mean, yeah, Thomas Ramos, man, he's just pretty consistent, really does the job well. He's been really good for the French, and I think they have to have some recognition on this side. I think he's been the best player for them that I can think of. Again, there's been Marco who I was considering, even Dupont. I mean, but Dupont, again, just hasn't had enough games this year to kind of consider him. So that's kind of the reason why I just didn't put him out of thinking. And again, there's a reason why he's been selected for the Sevens Player of the Year rather than Men's Player 15. So, but yeah, man, Thomas Ramos, man, just a heck of a player to watch. And yeah, he really kind of demonstrated that in that recent game against the All Blacks. Again, he was pretty good, I'd say, throughout kind of the Six Nations. Caught the most points, actually, when you look at it in terms of like just overall points. So, yeah, he definitely made an impact for the French. Other 15s I want to mention, I guess Fasties looked pretty good for the Springboks throughout this year. I think Juan Cruz Malia as well for the Argentinians really stood out for them. Really improved, really did well this year for the Argentinians. For the Australians, I mean, Tom Wright is really coming to his own recently. I think I have to mention him. Really good. Really had a really good campaign, actually, when looking at Tom Wright. But yeah, besides that, I mean, is there anyone else? I mean, 15. I mean, again, you can kind of make the claim with Bowden Bear to that. I mean, Will Jordan as well, always solid. So you got to say Will Jordan anytime you can. But man, there's so many players I've probably forgotten, guys. Let me know in the comments, guys. But that is my dream team there in terms of the 15-man squad that I've selected for this year. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Like and subscribe, guys. Let me know in the comments your dream teams, like I said. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.